When it comes to challenging racist perceptions, Black athletes have long held the symbolic burden of ambassadorship. In the days since the abolition of slavery in the Western world, the performances of Black athletes on the field of play have provided inescapable evidence to, of course, debunk the myth of white supremacy and prove that the Black community is good enough, intelligent enough, brave enough, and yes, human enough to truly be treated as equals. Today, we're used to seeing athletes of all colors and ethnicities competing side by side, but it wasn't that long ago when racial segregation prevailed on the playing field. White athletes and sport organizations competing against each other and refusing to cross the infamous color line due to racism. When we talk about athletes breaking racial barriers, names like Jackie Robinson, Jesse Owens, and Willie Ory rightfully come to mind. But few often remember the name of a man that not only broke down barriers, but in the early 1900s refused to accept the prevailing definitions of what it meant to be a Black man in America. In 1908, he became the first Black heavyweight champion of the world, and that is American boxing legend Jack Johnson. So let's paint the picture. America in 1908. We're talking about the height of the Jim Crow era that enforced racial segregation. We're still decades before the civil rights movement of the 1960s, and less than 50 years post the abolition of slavery. Lynchings of African Americans were a regular occurrence. In a nutshell, being Black in America was no picnic. Born March 31st, 1878 to freed enslaved parents in Galveston, Texas, Johnson possessed a confidence and a drive to exceed beyond the life of struggle his parents had known. He began competing in boxing as a teenager, and with his heavy-hitting, quick style, he rose through the ranks, knocking out opponent after opponent, mostly Black challengers and white ones that dared to cross the color line. With his success in the ring, Johnson had gained significant material wealth, which put him in a financial position that a lot of Americans had never seen a Black man in before. Like many others, he was an avid reader and a student of history, but he also exercised his right to dress as flashy as he wanted. He drove fast cars that he designed himself. And at a time when Black men were being lynched on the suspicion that they might have looked at a white woman, Johnson openly dated and married any woman he pleased, saying, "I have the right to choose who my mate will be without the dictation of any man. I am not a slave." White Americans were really uncomfortable with the idea of a Black man with real boldness and confidence in the face of white supremacy, who not only dominated in the ring, but lived his life unapologetically the way he wanted to outside the ring. With his success, his fame spread across the nation, and he set his sights on becoming the heavyweight champion of the world. But to do that, he had to defeat the reigning white heavyweight champion, a man named Jeffries, who was a hero in the white community. But Jeffries refused on account of Johnson being Black. After exhausting all suitable, meaning top white opponents, Jeffries retired in 1905, bought a farm, and started raising alpaca. Weird flex, but okay. After Jeffries' retirement, another man rose to take the heavyweight title, a Canadian that went by the name Tommy Burns. And like Jeffries, he was not willing to cross the color line. But Johnson was relentless. He followed Burns across the world, chirping him in hopes that one day he would cave. Finally, Burns said that he refused to cross the color line for less than $30,000, which was a huge pot at the time. He was so sure no one would come up with the amount. But he was wrong. An Australian promoter put up the money, and Burns was out of excuses. The fight was set for December 26, 1908. They were scheduled to go 20 rounds at the Sydney Stadium in Australia. An overconfident Burns said, "I'll beat that if my name isn't Tommy Burns." The Australian press called it the first great battle of the inevitable race war. So it's the day of the fight, the bell goes, and within seconds, boom, Burns is on the floor. He gets up and boom, he's knocked down again. The whole time Johnson is being attacked with racial abuse from Burns in his corner. Johnson was even quoted as saying, "If I had killed Burns for the language he used to me, I would have been justified." Round after round, Burns is being destroyed, and also being demolished is the fallacy that white Americans believed about black fighters being cowardly. As Burns is being pummeled, people start yelling, "Stop the fight! Stop the fight!" And in the 14th round, just as Johnson was about to knock out Burns, the police stepped in. The police, and stopped the fight and ordered the movie cameras to stop filming, sparing the world of video evidence of this spectacle of a black man knocking out a white man. So how do you think white fans reacted after all this? Did they A, call for a rematch, B, congratulate Johnson on the victory and join the black community in celebrating, or C, call Jack Johnson an imposter? After all, he hadn't beaten the invincible Jim Jeffries, who had retired undefeated. If you said C, you're absolutely right. And so began what's called the Great White Hope era. The search was on far and wide for a white challenger that could beat Jack Johnson and return the heavyweight title to its rightful race. One by one, with ease, Johnson defeated every single one of them, and with every victory put more and more pressure on Jim Jeffries, the heavyweight champion turned alpaca farmer, to get back into the ring. With the honor of the white race at stake, Jim Jeffries finally gave in. So he got his butt off the farm and started to train for the showdown set for Independence Day, July 4th, 1910 in Reno, Nevada. The buzz of the fight was as intense as fight buzz can be. Over 20,000 people traveled to Reno to watch. Jeffries had been out of the boxing ring for 6 years at that point, but managed to get himself into shape and was seemingly quite confident going in. Everyone knew there was so much more riding on this than the heavyweight title. It was billed to be the battle of the century. On the eve of the fight, Jeffries is quoted as saying, "I realize full well what depends on me. The portion of the white race that's been looking to me to defend its athletic superiority may feel assured that I'm fit to do my very best. I will win as quickly as I can." So today of the fight, the bell goes in the Sydney Stadium and the battle is on. Johnson dominates the fight from the beginning, landing blow after blow. Jeffries keeps pushing forward, but he's not able to match Johnson's incredible defense and hard-hitting punches. Round after round of this beating starts to take a toll on Jeffries, and it's clear that he's been out of the ring for too long and wasn't really quite the fighter he used to be. At the end of round 14, Jeffries' nose is broken, his eyes are swollen, his body is splattered with his own blood. And finally, in the 15th round, Johnson made his move, and Jeffries, for the first time in his previously undefeated career, was knocked down. Not just once, but repeatedly. Jeffries' camp jumped in, stopped the fight, and on Independence Day 1910, Jack Johnson, a 6-foot black man born to former slaves, became the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. The victory meant everything to the black community, who celebrated across the country as news spread. Whites were devastated and angered by the celebrations, and race riots broke out all across America. The rioting was deadly. The victims were mostly African American, and to this day, no one really knows the death toll. Many people were injured, and hundreds, maybe even thousands, were killed. Blacks were reminded by the white media not to get too confident or point their chest too high because their complexion matches that of the winner in Reno. This victory was so much bigger than boxing, and what it did for the psyche and morale of the black community in America, just 1 foot out of slavery, was monumental at the time. African American educator and journalist William Pickens summed it up like this: "It was a good deal better for Johnson to win and few Negroes be killed in body for it than for Johnson to have lost and Negroes to have been killed in spirit from the preachments of inferiority from the combined white press. It is better for us to succeed though some die than for us to fail though all live. The fact of the fight will outdo a mountain peak of theory about the Negro as a physical man and as a man of self-control and courage. It's remarkable what Johnson was able to achieve at that period in history without even a civil rights movement to support him. Accomplishing what he did in the way he did as a self-defined man, making no apologies for who he believed himself to be, inspired many black athletes after him to fight for equality. Muhammad Ali, who of course is widely regarded as the greatest of all times, in 1978 put it like this: "He was bad. Back in 1909, man, Jack Johnson was the greatest. He had to be the greatest of all. Wasn't no Black Panthers, wasn't no bodyguards, white people lynching Negroes, wasn't no television, no telephones. That Negro was doing all them stuff in them days. He was bad when you think about it. I know I'm bad, but he was crazy." Thanks for watching Color Commentary. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. Interested in the way sport and social change intersect? Why not subscribe to this channel and follow me at Wendy-Ann Runs on Twitter and Instagram.